1,000 of you out there. It's quite surreal. My name is Tanya Byron. I'm a clinical psychologist and a professor in the public understanding of science. And I hope that you've come along to hear what I've been asked to deliver, which is to talk to you about mental health issues that you face in the colleges where you're working and with your students, issues as educators that you're having to deal with and think about, and how the landscape is changing. Apologies for the stark room. I'm actually in my clinic today. So that's the background you've got. And the aim is that I'm going to talk for about 15 minutes and then we're going to have some questions. So do flag questions in the chat as we go along, so we can then answer them hopefully once I've finished talking. So when I was asked to do this talk, there was a lot of discussion about what would be the most useful to talk about. And it probably won't surprise you, but I get asked a lot by educationalists, educational authorities, organisations, schools, academy trusts, universities, to talk to staff about what seems to be a huge mental health crisis amongst particularly young people, and it seems to be getting worse. And one of the issues that a lot of us are grappling with, and we are grappling it in mental health services as well, in all the different teams I run. I've been doing this job for over 30 years. I'm nearly 60. And so I've seen how trends are changing. And one of the big things we're seeing is self-diagnosis. And it seems that the language of distress is now used by a lot of young people in the wrong way. So rather than talking about how I feel, I'm going to tell you about my mental health. Now, it's a good thing that we talk about mental health more than we ever did. When I started back in the late 80s, when I qualified, I'm that old, nobody talked about it. There was a huge stigma around mental health. So the fact things have changed is brilliant. But what concerns me now is the pendulum has swung too far in the other direction, from nobody talking about mental health to everybody talking about mental health, and often not talking about it accurately. And that then presents two problems. Number one, you get this inflated rate of people presenting with mental health problems, people who have self-diagnosed, usually most often via social media, usually most worryingly via information, quick click questionnaires, influencers, all provided in a way that has no academic basis. There is no professional involvement, but it gives a sense of belonging, a sense of community. We saw it really start in the pandemic. It's spaces and places where people can congregate and share their difficulties and then start to name them and label them, which then feels validating. So this is what we're seeing. And of course, what then happens for those of you who are used to using social media is you then get algorithmic amplification. So the algorithm will then start pumping more and more content at you, whether it's ADHD, autism, one of the neurodevelopmental issues, or whether it's about other mental health difficulties. And the algorithm then provides an echo chamber whereby you're not going to walk away from your diagnosis, you're just going to walk further into it. And the problem with that is that then it risks becoming an identity. Because if I tell myself I have a little bit of ADHD or I'm a bit OCD, and by the way, you can't have a little bit or a bit of any of those things. You either do or you don't, and we'll get there in a minute. But if I tell myself that when actually I don't, I'm very stressed, I'm overwhelmed, I'm struggling to communicate, that my learning isn't clicking in the way that it needs to. Maybe I have some learning needs that haven't been identified. If I describe it as disorder, then what I do is I reduce my own ability to manage what I'm finding difficult. Because if it's a disorder, then you've got to come and see someone like me. If it's a difficulty, well, maybe I can reach out. I can reach out to my college tutor. I can reach out to the staff welfare team, the pastoral team. I can talk to my friends. I can talk to my family. I can contact some mental health charities, or charities that just look at the aspects of life that I'm struggling with, because I'm a young person and that's kind of how life feels. So on the one hand, a diagnosis disempowers people who don't have a condition. But secondly, and this is where I get quite pissed off, is it also dilutes the meaning of that diagnosis. So what we're seeing in mental health is called concept creep, both horizontally and vertically. More aspects of difficulty are now being included in a diagnosis, which means it dilutes it. There are more things that I can bring to the assessment that makes me more likely to be diagnosed. So the gatekeeping becomes less rigorous. And also, there are more ways in which I can be diagnosed, even though those ways are not evidence-based and standardized. Now, that problem, for me, and where it makes me very annoyed, is it then takes away the efficacy of that mental health diagnosis from the people who are really struggling. So I work with people who live with ADHD, who are on the autistic spectrum, may also have a comorbid condition such as a bipolar condition, who live with crippling anxiety, or who are in a significant clinical depression. And there is nothing more demeaning than having your experience taken and reduced in a way that it then becomes actually fairly meaningless. Yesterday in one of the clinics that I run, a young person I was talking to was saying how difficult it is for them to be able to tell their friends that they have this diagnosis, because everybody's got it. Everybody's got it. And it then diminishes. And in a way, it stops people talking. So we're talking more, but we're also shutting down the people who actually do need to be heard by taking away, by hijacking language that doesn't belong to us. It belongs to them. And we need to preserve it and hold it for those people so that limited resources are targeted at them. Now, I can go on, but how, you're probably all sitting there thinking, God, when's she going to shut up and how does this relate to me? So this is where I think I want to put it in a way that hopefully you'll find useful. I think the headline is, big feelings are not the same as illness. I think that education establishments are getting caught up in this environment of panic around my anxiety, my depression. I think I'm ADHD. I can't sit in this room because I'm pretty sure I've got this neurodevelopmental difficulty. And what I hear a lot is that we're all striving to be trauma informed. Now, of course, it's good to be trauma informed, but most people don't have trauma. And that is another word that has been completely hijacked. My trauma, it is so traumatic. Trauma, in the true sense, is so frightening, so terrifying, the traumatic moment or the series of trauma events, that I'm not going to be able to rock up and tell you that I've got trauma. So having a trauma-informed culture, while I really celebrate the fact that that's being thought about, I then think it pushes educational cultures towards the diagnostic end of mental well-being, because then everything becomes trauma. Now, you are dealing with 16 to 18-year-olds and slightly older. So you're dealing with people who are slap bang in the biggest stage of brain development. What you're dealing with is a stage of brain development where the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that is to do with thinking, problem solving, decision making, rationalizing, it's to do with being able to distinguish between what's real and what isn't real. It's the part of the brain we're all using now. that part of the brain is also part of how we regulate our emotions and how we regulate our behaviours. So people who have a frontal lobe injury will show personality changes, will be more aggressive, will struggle with behavioural self-management, because that's the area of the brain that controls all of those mechanisms. Now, that bit of the brain from puberty until the age of about 24 undergoes major restructuring. It's called individuation, as the young of the species prepare themselves to leave the herd and to become their own independent being. And as that part of the brain is restructuring, it shuts down a bit, which means other areas of the brain become louder, particularly the limbic brain, and that's the emotional brain. So you've suddenly got young people who are behaving in ways that feel less rational and they feel more emotional. And if we are living in a time and a culture where emotion is now being described as a mental health problem, we've got a real problem on our hands. I want to differentiate between a mental health experience and a mental health difficulty. A mental health experience is emotions, thoughts, and reactions that are human, expected, and linked to context. The context of the developing adolescent brain is biological, psychological, and socially challenging time of life where, as I said before, rational thought comes second. Initially, emotion is in the driving seat. A mental health difficulty relates to distress that is persistent, impairing, and out of proportion to context. It doesn't resolve with time, support, or ordinary coping, and it significantly interferes with daily functioning across all settings. So you can't be a bit depressed. Depression, you don't just take depression off the shelf like a pair of shoes and I'm going to wear it today, but tomorrow I'm not depressed. Depression is a complete change in function, biological shutdowns around appetite, libido, sleep falls apart, the day-night waking pattern shifts, and all of this has to have been present for a minimum of 2 weeks for any kind of diagnosis to make. Distress is not pathology. So being anxious before exams, overwhelmed by relationships, emotionally volatile, identity confused, intensely self-conscious, or deeply reactive to rejection are not signs that something has gone wrong. They're signs that it's a developing brain doing exactly what it's designed to do in a world that is getting more and more pressured. So we've got the limbic system, the emotional center of the brain. It drives fear, excitement, reward, and anger. It's highly sensitive during adolescence and it reacts fast and it reacts big. And then you've got your prefrontal cortex, which doesn't finish developing until the age of 24. And it manages impulse control, perspective taking, emotional regulation. It allows us to pause, reflect, and then react. It allows us to go, this will pass. I can hold on to the distress. I can tolerate the discomfort I'm feeling because it will pass. And as I say, it continues developing into the mid-20s. So, of course, emotions feel stronger, reactions are quicker, setbacks feel catastrophic, and reassurance doesn't always land. And logic generally comes after the feeling, not before it. And that's not a dysfunction, that's development. So why are we seeing so many students self-diagnosing, seeking labels, describing normal feelings in clinical language, and presenting as mentally unwell rather than emotionally overwhelmed? I'd say there are 3 forces colliding. Number one, we have a diagnostic culture. Young people are growing up fluent in mental health language, but not always in emotional literacy. And that's where you have the skills and the talents to steer the conversation in another direction. They have words like trauma, anxiety disorder, burnout, but they have fewer words for fear, shame, pressure, loss of control. And that's where we can help the vocabulary change and the self-understanding develop. So number one, a diagnostic culture. Number 2, reduced tolerance for discomfort. Distress is now framed as something to eliminate not to tolerate, not to process, not to learn from. And then there's also adult anxiety, us. We are becoming more and more afraid of missing something. There's a highly litigious society we live in. There's a lot of cancel culture. If people don't feel seen or heard in the way that they say they should be or expect to be. And so we're finding that safeguarding thresholds, for example, have crept downwards with good intentions, but it does mean in our anxiety, sometimes we can missee what is actually going on. Again, normal developmental distress can then get escalated into clinical concern, which of course paradoxically increases the anxiety rather than containing it. I would say what you are mostly seeing: a nervous system that is overloaded, emotional immaturity meeting adult expectations, a lack of confidence in coping, and a fear of failure in a really high stakes world. And these are not signs that a student is broken, they're signs that they're still developing capacity. So what does this mean? I want to encourage you to feel able to reframe what is being presented to you. I am not telling you to be clinicians, and I feel like the amount of pressure on educationalists already is ludicrous. You are not clinicians. You should not be clinicians in the same way that in my clinic, I don't try and get up and teach a class. I'd be rubbish at it. I wouldn't know what to do. You have your skills, I have mine. But we have to find a way to support each other. For you to reframe when somebody comes to you with the language of mental illness, try and validate what they're feeling rather than going straight to the illness language they're using. Try and support regulation. Okay, what could we do next? Rather than reinforcing fragility, being overly anxiously trauma informed. And try and hold boundaries if you can. The first question has to be, is this a mental health problem, or is it a developmentally understandable response? And then what can I do that supports building capacity rather than dependency? And truthfully, you already do it. You will be feeling de-skilled in a landscape of mental health language. And I want to say to you that actually you are incredibly skilled just by dint of who you are and the jobs that you do. We need to offer support that is calm and predictable. We need to name emotions in ordinary language. We need to model that feelings can rise and fall and normalize that. We need to encourage tolerable exposure, not avoidance. Negotiate timetables, look at different ways of engaging people who are really struggling with anxiety and are avoiding. We need clear routines and expectations, and we need to know when not to escalate. Crucially, we need to recognise that not every distressed student needs a diagnosis, but every distressed student needs containment, understanding, and time. So before we tackle the questions, I want to say to you, your role in FE is not to be clinicians. It is to be emotionally literate adults with calm nervous systems yourself so that your students can co-regulate with you. If they're panicking, you don't. If they're grappling for language, you help them name their feelings. You become translators between feeling and meaning, and you become protectors of development, not accelerators of diagnosis. Now, I'll stop there. I think somebody's going to join me now to ask me some questions, and I hope that we can include some questions that that you've all got. I'm hoping that there are people out there, or I've been talking into a void for about 20 minutes. Hello, Rachel.
Hi, yeah, thank you for that. So we've got some questions that we've kind of compiled beforehand, but I'm hoping some people will come along and put questions into the Q&A or into the chat, so we've got some more to work with. So the first one that I wanted to ask, and we get asked a lot, and I think you've touched on it a little bit already in what you've said, but as I get a lot of people saying, I'm worried I'm going to say the wrong thing. So how can we improve our confidence when we're discussing mental health with our young people?
When you say I'm worried about, I'm going to say the wrong thing, you mean somebody's presenting to me in distress and I'm going to say something and it's actually going to cause more harm than good?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. How can we improve our confidence discussing mental health with young people? That's the headline, right? I'd say that is a good question, because I'd say it's one of the most common fears in education. It comes from a very human place. The worry that, you know, you could make something worse or that you'll get it wrong. What I would say, again, providing a sort of psychological reframe, is you're not being asked to provide the perfect intervention. You're being asked to provide a safe relationship. And confidence, in my experience, confidence grows when staff realise that mental health conversations are not about having special terms and this understanding of mental health that people like me have. It's about having a steady stance. I used the word co-regulation before. That's what makes a difference, even to somebody who is in a mental health crisis, who would come into my clinic and they're really unwell. We don't do anything special in the beginning. All we do is remain calm and steady, and we wait and we support them to de-escalate, and we try and help them give some words to how they feel. So aim to be present, but you don't have to be precise. You can be warm, you can be calm, you can be curious. You can validate how somebody is feeling without diagnosing them. You would want to use emotional language. That sounds really hard. I can see you've been carrying a lot. Listen without rushing. Name the feeling or the experience, and then identify the next support step. You are not the whole solution. And sometimes it can feel like I have got to solve this for this student, or something really bad will happen. That's not your role, and it should never be, and you should never be expected to do that. But asking is not harmful. Asking a question will not drive somebody to do something dangerous. If they were to do that, you would know that already by their presentation, and you would have called an ambulance, or you would have got the safeguarding team in. So we're talking about people who come, they're distressed, but they're telling you they have a mental health problem. Have boundary phrases ready. Things like, I'm really glad that you told me. Let's think about what support could come next. They don't need us to be perfect. They just need us not to panic. They need us to co-regulate them and to show them that things can be managed at a time when they think the only thing that can be done is a diagnosis and possibly medication, because that's not what we want.
Lovely, thank you.
My pleasure. Oh, you've gone. Oh, hello.
My turn, Tanya, my turn. We've actually had some really good questions come through the chat, so I'm actually going to go to those, I think. We've got a good one from Nick, who says, given how online content shapes young people's self-understanding, how can we help students navigate mental health information on social media more critically and safely?
Great question, Nick. Hello, Nick. I cannot tell you how bizarre it is doing these talks. It's like you think, is anyone there? Have people slipped into a coma with boredom? It's odd. So, Nick, thank you for being there. Thank you for listening. Thank you for asking a question. I think it comes really around the sort of work that as adults we've had to do over the years, which is develop critical thinking skills. You know, I obviously, as a woman who's going to be 60 in a year, I was obviously not born with technology. It didn't come until almost the point when I became a mother in the 90s that it became much more accessible. So I am not a digital native at all. In a way, all of us will be talking to people who are more digitally savvy than we are, but are also more vulnerable because can go to places where they think they might be being helped and they're not. So for me, it's about critical thinking. It's about reliability of source. It's about acknowledging, I understand that you think that you have a borderline personality disorder. That feels like a big thing for you to carry. can you tell me where you got the information? Is it through CAMS, or did you see something online? And I'd be really interested to see what it is you've seen, because obviously there is a gullibility and a vulnerability and a naivety. So what we have to do is we have to first of all check the source, because without the source being checked, we have no idea what information they're being fed. I also think it's our responsibility to kind of be in those areas as well, to see and know the kind of information that is being bombarded to them. Who are the current influencers who are talking about my ADHD? What are they saying? I think we've also got to be present in a way that we feel authentic, as in we understand the content that they might be consuming.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you, Nick. Am I back to Rachel?
Yeah, I was going to pick another one off the chat actually, so I think they're probably better than the questions that we had. So
you asked me. Okay.
I'm not sure if we'll get time for all of them, but there are some really good ones. But this one particularly stood out because it's a slightly different angle on it. So this one's from Jim. Thanks, really interesting. Do you have any advice for how to support parents who are also keen to self-diagnose their young people in order to gain support?
Yeah, I mean, brilliant question. I mean, I'm a parent myself. I mean, my kids are adults now, they're 27 and 30, so I've done my job. But so it's a bit ironic of me to say parents can be really annoying and difficult, but actually for clinicians and educators, they can. And that it's unfair of me to say that, because the annoying aspect of it comes with a lot of anxiety. So we're not just having to be a container for the young people, we're also having to be a container for their parents, carers, guardians, who themselves are bringing a lot of anxiety. Now, this is multi-layered. Number one, I know my child is ADHD, and I know my rights, I know their rights, and I know they need special considerations in exams, and I know you have to give them breaks, and I know they can sit in a separate room, and I know because it's raining and they are sensorily sensitive, I know they don't have to take the exam today. There's that bit. There's the kind of, I'm going to take everything I can to give my child an advantage. And that, I mean, okay, fair enough. We all want to give our children advantage, but it's the hijacking. It's the, no, I'm telling you, this is how it is. So there's that one. But there's also parents who genuinely are afraid, who genuinely have a young person who they think might be self-harming in their bedroom, or who is constantly glassy-eyed and they're pretty sure they're just smoking weed all the time. These parents also, legitimately bring their own issues to you. So you're not just supporting a child, you're supporting the whole system. For me, it's about boundaries. It's about being very, very clear about what is being said and what is being asked, and the boundaries of your capacity and capability in your roles as educators and as further education colleges. It's about being able to say, I respect that this is what you think might be going on, but without a formal diagnosis, unfortunately, we cannot justify accommodations to the exam board, but maybe we could think about this, that, and the other. It's about being able to negotiate and be flexible, but also to hold boundaries, because obviously you don't want to then find your actions with that family become precedential, and then everybody's asking for their child to take the exam in whatever room, in whatever climate, on whatever day of the week that suits them. So it's a difficult one, but remember that the thing that helps anxiety the most is clarity, calmness, and boundaries. And being clear and firm actually de-escalates anxiety. Even if people don't get quite what they want, at least they feel they're getting something from somebody who's clear about what they will do and what they can't do. So that would be my advice.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
I'm going to jump in from the ether, from the background now, Tanya. I'm in the green room. We've got some great questions, but this one's, again, a different angle, actually. I quite like this one. How can staff work on keeping their own nervous system calmed? That's from Rhiannon.
Absolutely brilliant question, Rhiannon. All questions have been brilliant. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's the analogy that's sort of talked about to death, isn't it? I used to use it a lot in my Times column, and I do it less now because I've realised everybody says it, which is put your oxygen mask on first. But it is actually true. You know, it's counterintuitive if the plane is going down to not put your kids' oxygen masks on, but actually you have to put yours on, because if you collapse, then they collapse. So it's about having a whole school culture. It's about a school culture that feels inclusive. It's about a language within a school that is less about diagnosis and more about feelings and well-being and resilience and all the things that enable people to cope with life's challenges. It's about staff feeling able to talk about what they're struggling with. A lot of stress on you guys, a lot of pressure, a lot of targets, a lot of testing, a lot of hoops that you have to jump through. You've got to be able to talk about it without a fear that someone's going to judge that you're not doing your job well enough. If a culture cannot hold the stress of the people that are working within it, the culture in itself is dysfunctional. So it also has to be top down. It also has to feel like it's coming from the top as a role model, saying, this is what we'll talk about. This is a safe space. These are the things that we want you to be able to come to us about, so that staff also feel that within this process of supporting a lot of very vulnerable and often quite fragile young people, they are being supported as well, because it's draining. And just as part of that, what I want to say is, you do not take the issues, the problems, the emotional life of your student home with you. There has to be mechanisms within the organisation where people can debrief if they've had a particularly difficult time, where they can have space to change gears before they leave the premises. Your job is to contain, but it's not to absorb. So once you've done that, you leave it and you then go to your life where you get the restorative nurture, the relationships and the exercise and all the things that hopefully you're doing and you've got to restore you. But I'd say it has to be about the culture. I'll finish that one.
Lovely. One that's quite interesting on here, and I think a few people probably quite interested in the answer to. It says, why are we seeing a rise in identity crises among children today, and what are the psychological drivers behind this trend?
I'm curious what identity crises means. I'm not quite sure what I'm being asked. Am I being asked about mental health identity? Am I being asked about gender identity? Let's just take identity in the broadest sense.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're at a very kind of crucial and critical time where the language of identity is being adopted as a way of managing difficult feelings. And I think that's because we are not noticing what children and young people have to grow up in. It really, really annoys me when I hear people of my generation looking and tutting and dismissing and snowflaking and being really quite dismissive and rude about what a young person, a child might be saying because we don't like the way they're saying it. Now that's ridiculous, and that makes us the problem. And if there is language out there that resonates with something that I'm struggling with, then I'm going to use that language if I'm going to try to communicate what I'm struggling with, particularly if I can see that there is a community built around that language that will welcome me in with open arms. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, and I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm saying it's a thing. This is what is happening. But Gen Z, we've got Alpha, we've got millennials. What kind of world are they inheriting? Very different to what I inherited. My generation screwed it financially, right? In the 90s, we screwed everything. In the early noughties. So unlikely to be able to get a property in your 20s or when you're starting out in life. might not get a job. Oh my gosh, is AI going to take my job away? Geopolitical unrest popping up everywhere, wars, financial crises, and so on and so on. The language that's being used may not reflect a reality in actual terms, but it reflects a distress, and that's what we need to hear. We need to look behind the language and listen to what is being said. Now, for some young people, the language they're using may be accurate, but then our job is to support them, critically evaluate and think about what it is that they are communicating, and really look at how they understand it. Are there other ways of understanding it? Because obviously we have a developing mind. We do not have a developed mind. So it's about conversation, but it's not about shutdown, and it's not about being dismissive, and it's not about snowflaking, because then we're missing the point. The point is distress is being expressed using words that may not be accurate, but are telling us something.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thanks, Tanya. I'll come back. So this one is interesting, and actually some people have already commented really good answers. But if online is young people's first place to go to seek answers regarding mental health issues, is there somewhere, something, a website that you could advise them to look at, which you could recommend? Some people have already recommended on this Q&A, Young Minds is good, Truth and The Mix. But is there any from your point of view?
Yeah, well, that's what I would have said. I've got a list here actually that I prepared for today. Yeah, Young Minds is an amazing mental health charity that if you I just go and have a look at the website. They've got pages for adults, pages for young people, pages for kids, and it's all evidence-based, and it's really well explained. It's great language, it's really inclusive, but it's also very clear and very boundaried. You've got The Mix as another charity. You've got another charity, Shout, which is a great charity for young people. So those are the kinds of places that will offer support also to you as adults in terms of kind of understanding what is it we're seeing, you know, how can we respond to it. I'm just having a look here. Evidence-based NHS support comes with the NHS Every Mind Matters website. You've got NHS Talking Therapies, which will give information about what CBT is, how you can access it, etc. Young Minds, the Anna Freud Centre, annafreud.org. It's really high quality, psychologically grounded well-being and self-help materials, and it's built around what's called the Thrive model. It's a model that they've developed, which is about a stepped approach towards somebody having a mental health problem. So it's like starting at distress and moving into a clinical syndrome. And so the Thrive model, if you look at it in the Anna Freud website, is really good. We've got Kooth, KOOTH.com, which is free online counselling for young people, and it has really good, well moderated peer forums. mind.org.uk, studentminds.org.uk. These are resources specifically for further and higher educational settings. There's the Samaritans always there, you know, in a moment of crisis. Their number should be around for your students in the way that Childline was around for them when they were in primary school. Give us a shout.org is the shout text line. Autism.org.uk, a lot of support for young people on the spectrum or who think they might be on the spectrum. The ADHD Foundation, and there is also on the gov.uk website quite a lot of mental health and behaviour key policy guidance. The charities are better. Look at the Anna Freud Thrive framework. I think you will find that really helpful.
Great, thank you. Some really good recommendations there. There's so many questions coming through. We certainly won't be able to get through all of them, but
you have to ask me back, Sam. You've got to ask me back.
Absolutely, you've clearly hit a key topic here. This one was interesting from Andrew. Are there any dangers in not referring students on when they report a mental illness?
I think the danger is to assume that it isn't, right? And I also think you are not gatekeepers, right? So if there is acute distress, then absolutely, you know, I'm not talking about that top end where it's kind of pretty obvious, even to other students in the college, that they're concerned about their friend. But I'm talking about the distress, the stress, my anxiety. That's what I'm talking about. Remember that it has to be persistent and impairing function. And what's really interesting in mental health, it's the same actually with my colleagues in medical physical health. If you and I are running towards there's been a horrible car accident, we're running towards it to try and help people, we tend to not go first to people who are screaming. We go first to the people who are silent. And in a way, the louder the noise, the more there is for you to be able to work with, because it's being expressed. But if there are behaviours that is danger to myself or to others, you know, behaviours that are clearly showing an escalation of distress, then you must always refer. And actually, you can start a referral route via A&E, because there'll be an on-call psychiatry and mental health team. So I'm not suggesting you don't refer, but what I'm talking about more is how you hear it and how you think about it with that young person before you get to that stage. And again, look at the Thrive framework on the Anna Freud website, because it really sort of stepwise, it will talk you through the different stages to the point when it's like, okay, if we've done our decision making flow diagram and we're here, now you refer.
Thank you. That car crash analogy is so good. I've never thought of it like that, but you're absolutely right. You do go to the ones who are silent. I think probably.
Can I give you another analogy very quickly?
Go for it.
Right. What we are all doing, me as a clinician, you guys as amazing educators, unsung heroes, by the way, always felt we should have been clapping you on a Thursday at 8 o'clock during the pandemic. But anyway, just FYI, that was in my head when I was clapping. Myself as a frontline staff worker. But what I want to say is this: think of the brain as it's neuroplasticity. The brain is plastic until the age of 24. Puberty onset, you will get 50% of mental health problems that will present through the lifetime will present at puberty. Puberty is such a major biopsychosocial event that it will, for those with an underlying predisposition, plus enough ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, it will show itself then. By the age of 24, 25, 75% will have shown themselves. So the other 25% are things like age-related cognitive decline, like dementias or accidents and brain injury and so on and so on and so on. But 75% by the age of 24. So you've got this plastic brain. So actually we have got intervention windows, and you have got this incredible time where the brain is really plastic and you can leave your fingerprints on it in terms of the support and nurture you give. The brain is like a forest, right? And we're in the forest, and you've got a young person coming to you and they're lost and they're saying, this is the way I go, or I think I should go this way, or I'm trying to go this way. And you take a step back and you take a breath and you think, okay, that pathway probably isn't the most helpful, but that's what you're doing for now. But why don't we start to think about support that could create another pathway, a pathway in the forest that will actually take them through and out the other side? So it's about neuronal networks. You're actually having an impact at the level of the brain in terms of brain development. And please do not take for granted the skills you already have and what you already do. You turn up, you listen, you care, you remember something they might have told you a month ago. These are extremely therapeutic in terms of helping a young person who is struggling to tolerate their distress. Already you're doing an amazing thing. Do not let this culture and everything having to be trauma informed throw you off, because suddenly you think, I have no idea what to do. What does this all mean? You do know what to do. You're already doing it. And, you know, I have so much respect for you. I don't want you to leave me today thinking shit, we've all got to become clinicians. I want you to leave thinking, actually, what she's saying makes sense. We are doing it. Let's look at some of these frameworks and motor on, and ask me back. And next time we'll do it in a room so I can actually see you and we can have a laugh.
Thanks, Tanya. I think the last question Rachel and I were both keen to ask is just what's one thing that everyone could take away from your keynote today and apply it in their sort of daily interactions and with students and with colleagues, because we have many staff who aren't particularly education frontline focused, support roles, etc.
I think it's a bit of that sort of slightly dramatic little speech I made about 2 seconds ago. I think I want you to take away confidence. I think your confidence is decimated by a culture that's freaking out about mental health. Look, 1 in 4 children and young people, well, particularly from, as I said, from puberty onwards, 1 in 4 will present with a mental health difficulty, a diagnosable mental health difficulty, maybe not very, not in crisis, and we can turn it, in my services, we can turn it around quite quickly, but it passes that threshold. In self-diagnosis, what we're thinking is it's actually 1 in 3. People are presenting as if it's 1 in 3. So it's massively inflating the diagnoses, the prevalence. But the strongest protective factor for young people's mental health is not a program, it's not an app, it's not a policy, it's not even a label. It's 1 trusted adult, 1 stable relationship, and 1 environment where distress can be spoken about without shame. It's about you doing what you already do really well, noticing, listening, staying steady, helping students name what they feel, and supporting agency and next steps. I'm a very practical clinician. Obviously, I hear what you're saying. It must be difficult. I'm there with you while you shed your tears, but I want you to leave me with a sense of agency. I want you to leave me with 1 thing. It could be the tiniest thing, but something that gives you hope. You're already doing that. You don't even realize it, but you are. And so that's what I want you to take away. The sort of things you want to be saying are, this is hard, but you're not alone, and let's work out what happens next. And that could be safeguarding and it could be referring, but it could be so many other things. That is a well-being culture in action. It's not thinking you have to fix every problem, but it's building the capacity to face problems with support. There you go.
Look at that. On the
I
dot.
feel like I need closing
perfect.
music and closing credits and like violins. It just feels all very dramatic now, doesn't it?
A massive thank you from Rachel and I, and for your keynote. It was excellent and clearly very thought-provoking. 1 people have asked if it's been recorded. Yeah, absolutely, and we will circulate that with lots of other resources that we have from the rest of the conference, from the various different sessions. They will be made available to you. But thank you once again, Tanya. Really appreciate your time, and yeah, hopefully we will bring you back in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you're all applauding thunderously. I'll imagine that. And Sam, I will send you the list of those websites, the resources that I suggested. So I don't know where you can post it somewhere, so everybody can make use of them as well.
Right.
Thank you for asking me. Thank you for having me. Have a good rest of your Wednesday. Bye.
Enjoy the conference, everyone.